Hi everyone. Here I am to do another OOTK or opening of the key example reading for you. Um, I had a request to do that or to do this rather, um, since sort of my more popular videos have to do with the opening of the key. And it is good to see people do it and see their strategies for it, because as you know, I still find it a sort of overwhelming reading, so it's good practice for me as much as it is for you. It's a learning experience for everyone. So, and I think it's challenging every time you do it, and it pushes your limits as a reader. I think it's obviously a healthy challenge. I think when we come to rely on one spread all the time, especially if it's a positional, relatively easy spread like Kill to Cross, I think this is good because then we know what spreads are reliable for us and which ones work best. But we don't ever grow. We don't ever push ourselves to learn anything new. And it's funny, no matter how many opening of the keys I do for anyone or myself, um, I learn something new every time. So anywho, this is for those people who would like to see another example. So who am I going to do this reading for? I would like to do the reading for my mother's, what is it, her great-great-grandmother, Antonia Innis. Now, Miss Antonia has a really interesting history. She is, of course, more than past. So that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to choose someone who since it's just an example, I wanted to choose someone who isn't living, so I'm not invading anyone's privacy. So hopefully this will work out. And the other thing is, Antonia was from Portugal. Everyone in my family is Portuguese in some form or another, usually Azorean. But Antonia was supposedly from Britannia, and there's this. It's a very weird history, and the documentation is not particularly reliable, or at least the documentation we've found. And we know that she was a redhead, which is very uncommon, with the last name of Innis, or Inige. We don't really know how it was supposed to be pronounced, or whether or not when she came in at Ellis Island, if they even got her name correct. So this is the weird thing. But if it's Innis, and the fact that she was a redhead, she was most likely Scottish of some kind, or Celtic. We don't really know if she was Irish or Scottish, or just English. It's tough to say, but we know that she married a Portuguese man, believe it or not. Sorry, I'm enjoying a nice cup of chai as I do this. And so she emigrated to the United States with her children and her husband, and she ended up leaving, and she left them behind. And the the familial legend seems to go that she left because of sort of shame, I guess, that she had been sort of socially exiled, not by the government, but by her peers, and that she felt she needed to leave and come back to Portugal. So we are curious as to why that might have been, why she decided to leave her children, what made her go back and make that decision. So I'm going to do a reading for my great to the nth power grandmother, Antonia Innis. I'm just going to call her Innis for lack of a better knowledge of what it should be. But anyhow, I'm going to do a reading for her, and about that time in her life when she decided to go back to Portugal and what her reasons for that were. So she was born at the end of February, and so I'm going to use, because I don't really know what she was like otherwise, I'm going to use the Queen of Cups for her as an older, mature water sign. I know technically as a Pisces I should be using the, or at least in Crowley's deck, the Knight of Cups technically, but I'm going to use the Queen of Cups. That just makes more sense to me. Okay, so that's going to be her significator. Okay, so I just shuffled and obviously skipped it as far as recording is concerned so that you don't have to see it. So I've got my deck all set up. I invoked also and defined my question, and I asked to please give insight in regards to Antonia's decision to leave the United States and to leave her children behind, what her reasons for that were. So I, of course, shuffled, and now I'm going to cut. So I'm going to take, the way I do it is a little different, because this is what makes sense to me, but other people say to do it otherwise, as I've said. But I cut the deck in half and place it to the right. Some people say to place it to the left, but I place it to the right because well, hang on a second, let me finish cutting them. Then I take the left pile, cut that in half, and place that to the right. And then take this pile and cut that in half and place that to the right. So all in all, you should have 4 piles of relatively equal card amounts. Now the reason I do it to the right is because working from the top down, this being, the deck all the way to my right, being the Yod pile, the fire pile, the pile of beginnings, I feel like those should be the cards at the top of the deck and not at the bottom of the deck. So that's my reasoning for doing it that way. If you do it to the left, you don't end up with that scheme, but I realize that if you do it to the left, you're following more the Hebrew way of reading letters, and so that might make more sense to you. And if it does, I mean, I've done it that way too, and that works. So, but I do it to the right now, and then you flip them over, obviously. And in your in the fire pile, I have the priestess, and or the Yod pile. The Hey primal pile, I have the fool, or the water pile. Then the air pile, I have the Ace of Discs, the Vav pile. And then for the Hey final pile, I have the Queen of Wands, which is very interesting to me. Okay, so for all these, this is sort of an interesting group of cards. We have the priestess in the fire pile, and that seems to speak of a lot of, well, right off the bat, secrecy. It's which is funny to me, and very subtle. Being the fire pile, if we were to use elemental dignities for it, technically, the priestess would not be that strong of an impulse, and or rather, not that strong of an influence. So we could say that maybe there is some secrecy going on in this situation, but it's very much in the background. Perhaps there are women that are involved in this that are into gossip, perhaps, but I don't know. I think there isn't anything else to really indicate that, and so otherwise, excuse me, it might just be intuitive reasons, really, just deep desire to maybe to go back is what it's saying, to go back to Portugal for my great, I'm just going to say great grandmother, even though she's not my great grandmother, but just to spare myself from saying so many greats. I mean, she was born in like 1860 or something like that, to give you an idea of how far this goes back. Now the water pile, we have the Fool, and that's interesting too. Both of these cards are really powerful in archetypally, not necessarily based on elemental dignities, but the Priestess is such a strong card, and the Fool is such a strong card too, at least in my opinion. And so for the water pile, that speaks of longing for newness and for freshness. And I think wanting to start over again. Perhaps not really paying much attention to obligations as much. I don't know. That's sort of interesting. Maybe we'll come to find out more about that. The air pile, the Vav pile, or the swords pile, whatever you want to say, has the Ace of Discs. Now, technically, this is also weak. And so we see that basically, if the Priestess is the original impulse, and the Fool is sort of that which receives that impulse, or is the mirror image of that impulse, or you could say the emotional response to that first impulse, that first idea, then the air pile sort of represents the fusion of those, how that relationship between these two cards plays out in the realm of relationships with other people, as far as communication is concerned, partnerships, dealings, issues that you have with other people, conflicts, that sort of thing, problems, concerns. So the concern that arises from this is financial, clearly, and needing new finances, needing a new source of money, because money is not that strong. I think the fact that the Ace of Discs is in the air pile, it's not a strong influence. It seems to be lacking here, and so that's what we're looking to solve, or this is what Antonia was looking to solve. The Queen of Wands is the final, basically the final result of these influences. The crystallization of these forces in the physical realm. And we have the Queen of Wands could either be another person who comes into this situation who is a very strong force, a very magnetic force and powerful, one that's in control of the situation, or perhaps it represents Antonia herself. But we have a very strong, very attractive woman in the physical realm, and so I don't know if that's an allusion to that. If she, because she was such a strong person, people felt the need to create those rumors about her, or who knows. So now let's look for her significator, the Queen of Cups, if you remember. And it is in the fire pile, as it should be, because we looked for her impulses as to why she left the United States, what her motivations were. So now we're only going to read from this pile in this video, especially since it's an example video, technically. I don't want to bore you to death with my family history, but so I thank you for your patience with that, that aspect of it. But anywho, okay, so here we have our string of cards, and our significator is right here. Here she is, Antonia herself. And so we're going to read from there. Now for women, remember, I count to the right, or clockwise, and men I count to the left. This is just a way of simplifying it. If your court cards do not face a specific direction, the Golden Dawn original instructions are to count in the direction the card is facing. But because Miss Queen of Cups clearly is facing us, the audience, we can't really count any direction for her. And so we have to come up with one for her. So we'll count to the right for her. So we have, first of all, in the beginning of the situation, she's surrounded by the Seven of Discs here and the Princess of Wands here. Now, the Princess of Wands is interesting because it shares an energy similar to the Fool, and the Fool was in her emotional pile, her water pile. But at the same time, it could also represent one of her children, that's sort of unclear. However, it's not, I don't think that that's necessarily it. I get the sense that this is more of an extension of her, um, though maybe not. She may have had difficulties raising children. Maybe it wasn't exactly her forte, because having the seven of discs on the side, this is the energy she is more attracted to. She's a water card here, right? And so, surrounded by fire and earth, she's not going to be that pleased with the fire card. She's going to have sort of an averse reaction to it, and is instead going to navigate herself towards the seven of discs. And by doing so, sort of balance them all out, so that they have sort of less than happy but neutral relationship with each other. So maybe she felt that she wasn't a particularly good mother if the Princess of Wands is one of her children, or her children in general. And the interesting thing is that being the Princess of Wands, there's something very adventurous about them. And, being an immigrant, it must have been odd raising children in a new culture and a new environment. So perhaps she felt odd about that. Maybe she felt out of place, or like she wasn't doing something right. Perhaps it was something like that. And if not, perhaps she just felt like she had made the wrong move, that she wasn't ready for that sort of foray into a new land, So we have some sort of complication there. Counting to the right 4, because she's a court card, 1, 2, 3, 4. We do hit the lust card, or Leo, and so Leo is surrounded by 2 air cards, and 2 very feisty air cards, actually. She has the Princess of Wands here, and the the Prince of Swords here, Princess of Swords, and the Prince of Swords here. Now, that seems very aggressive to me. There's, and sort of fused in the lust card, there's a lot of hastiness to her decision-making at the moment. She seems to just be, jumping into things without really thinking about them, I think, and just ruthlessly pursuing what her desires were. I think, and perhaps, I get the sense that maybe there were arguments at this moment, tensions between her and others, perhaps her and her husband, if this represents her husband, the Prince of Swords, someone who's very set on a specific goal and is going to just keep hammering that goal home until he gets bored with it, and is sort of unfeeling. And so she might have rebelled against that as the Princess of Swords, and felt that she needed to defend herself in that regard. And yet, I don't know, there's also at the same time probably a great passion between them with the lust card. I don't know, that's interesting. And then counting on from there, lust is a zodiacal trump, so we're going to count 12 from here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And we hit here on the other end, and this is the 10 of Cups here, surrounded by the Devil, and on the other side, the Priestess. So I'm just going to move her over here very quickly to remind us that she's there. And so here we have a very wet group of cards. We have 2 water cards and an earth card. So this is a very dense moment. Whereas the one we just came out of with the lust card was really feisty and really fast acting. Perhaps it was her gut reaction to moving here. I don't know. But here we have a more settled in moment, I think. Or I think it represents more, I just see it as, in a way, this sort of nagging nostalgia. The 10 of Cups, I think, is her sense of home, sense of community, and paired with the Devil, it sort of becomes very one-sided, in the sense that she may be unable to open up to the idea of a new community, and feeling tugs at wanting to regain that old community, that old sense of home and family, and that becoming just a very innate part of her personality, and just feeling like that was better, that was more right, that was purer, that was a real sense of home, as opposed to where she had ended up. Counting from the Ten of Cups, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, we hit the Lost card again. So it ends up being a very hasty decision, and just almost not being able to take it anymore, I think. And I think it does come across as very selfish, which is interesting.